if I have to think about things that people may not know about Ed, it's how smart he is. I had never worked with an artist who was more knowledgeable about his subject matter than Burtynsky. It was really quite disturbing. And over the years, I think the scale of Ed's work has increased, and the ambition to make a certain kind of picture, and the ambition to make a certain series of images, the ambition to make a 10-year project. These things are the result, they are the outcome of a really terrific business intelligence. Ed, of course, grew the business Image Works in Toronto, made it successful, and made it sustain his work. And I think he also has produced his work and marketed his work in a manner that then returns his investment so that he can make new and bigger and greater work.
Dan, I want to steal some stuff from you.
Very, very important point about him, which another artist I represent raised with me quite recently. He said that he didn't think that most people understood just how deeply Ed has always invested in his own craft. He has always done that, to the Carrara catalog, to the shoots. He has never, since I've worked with him, ever come to me or the old dealer and asked for an advance to finance those projects. He has always controlled them. Recently, we were looking at the new Spanish work. He had hired a helicopter for a week, and I asked him why he had a truck. And he looked at me and he said, well, because we had to refuel every day. And I was astonished at the budget that was required, and these things he just does.
Ed was always very well organized. He had a good studio assistant and all that sort of thing. And he had good records, good files, and dealing with Ed and his studio was really easy.
Ed developed a database. He developed an automatic database because in the early days the prices were staggered. As the editions sold out, the price went up. His assistant, when exhibitions were going on and things were busy, his assistant's phone was ringing all the time from San Francisco to New York, from us, from London. And so out of that frustration, Ed designed this database, an automated database that controlled inventory. And when sales are reported, it comes up on your email, everybody's email, so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. That has been incredible.
Any of the gallery representatives can go into the database. I'm just going to go into one that's unsold, and they can request for a print to be consigned, to purchase it. If it's already consigned to them, they can turn their consignment into a sale. They can request a price list. They can request a status report. Before we had this database, I had less hair.
I don't think I really released this, did I?
Yeah, you did. I think it's like sold out.
Really?
Yeah.
This one?
Ferris 9. Yeah, Ferris number 9.
Hmm?
Totally.
We met in second year, I guess that would have been 1977. We talked a lot about photography and about the future of photography and how to build a career, and what his big plan was to find a way to fund his private photography and and make big prints. He always wanted to make big prints.
Necessity being the mother of invention, I started planning a business to try to put together a lab that would become kind of a state-of-the-art place where artists could then go and produce their work. And the beautiful outcome of that was that it actually created a real confluence of creative people in the city who got to exchange ideas, see what everybody was working on, and I think it really started to build more of a market for color photography in the city.
So we had a whole culture of these people who'd hang out and talk all the time, like we have the Bruce Gibsons, the Richard Johnsons, and they were all here printing their work and mass production, and it was just, it's hard to describe, just a feeling of everybody had things in common, and you compared each other's pictures, and what shoot am I going on now?
Michael Mitchell, Arno Maggs, Spring Hurlbut, Susie Lake.
He took something that didn't exist in Toronto at all and gave people somewhere to go. It didn't really matter what level your career was at. There was a place to print, so people did. And there was no option in those days. There was no digital alternatives, so they needed to print or had their own black and white situations in their basements and stuff.
Here's my darkroom. No water. And so when it came to printing 16 by 20, I had to bring the thing out, shoot down onto the floor because I couldn't raise the thing, the enlarger enough. I couldn't do color here, it's impossible. Yeah, ImageWorks just provided so much capacity for photographers of all kinds to express themselves. And it still goes on. You can walk in there any day and people, it's incredible. So I love it.
Do you think there's less sex because of the digital age?
There's definitely less sex because of digital age. Nobody wants to use a darkroom anymore. Now that's just amongst employees. That's just employees. That's just because they don't use a darkroom anymore. Now when we rent out the darkrooms to people, who knows what happens in there? That I don't go check on. And the only reason we knew about sex because they talked about it a lot. So it was different. I was excluded, of course. Yes, just better put that clear. It was just it's the youngins that were here. Yes.
We were really hoping that we could achieve, maybe 20 galleries that would sign on in the first year. And we had over 40 participate in the first year, which was great. But we were all doing it as a volunteer thing, and there was no real infrastructure. And although he's an incredibly busy guy, I thought, well, I'm going to call Ed Burtynsky and find out, if he has any ideas or any inroads. And he was great. That it was just instantly, he was like, we can't let this die. This is important for the city, it's important for the country, and, I'll do whatever it takes.
When I started, it actually was just a temporary position because the festival was really floundering. Ed had just started on the board a few months before me, and so he was fresh as I was. And he really sort of stepped up to the plate to try and help support us. The staff at that time were only 2, to help support the staff, to help support the board so that we could really work towards turning the festival into something that lived up to the standards that he had seen and we had known of. He utilized his influence and his importance within sort of the philanthropic community in order to help fundraise. He also personally donated his own resources, his work, towards fundraising initiatives for the festival.
He's really should be credited with the person that saved Contact, because without Ed's involvement, it would not exist today, for sure.
When Ed and I first started working together about 10 years ago, this is very early days for digital, so it wasn't an option, and the kind of scale Ed works with, blowing up imagery to 60 by 80, digital just wasn't ready for that.
Film kind of limited me to a certain way of working, and I love that. It taught me a lot of discipline. It taught me, how to really wait for the light, how to know when I had it, how to capture it. And it was almost ritualistic on a set of tripod, a big 8x10 or 4x5, the whole Polaroid thing. All of that was very much a kind of a Zen moment where you just go there and you've got to get it in one of 2 frames.
The digital transition that Ed later went into about maybe 3-4 years ago actually started because of aerial photography. We were having a nightmare shooting from the skies in helicopters and airplanes. 4x5 cameras are large and just not really meant to be held outside a helicopter at 150 kilometers an hour or whatever. Digital solved all of these problems.
Now I'm doing a lot of work from helicopters with gyros and finding that a new 60 megapixel Hasselblad is now pushing somewhere almost better than a 4x5, but not quite an 8x10 yet.
Probably at about 1,000 feet, but go tight on it and just move along the streak for maybe a 20-second shot and then start to pull up towards the flame.
One of the things that I've found over the last 5 years is I've absolutely liberated myself of where I get to stand. If I want to be anywhere, I will be there. I'll find a way to be there. I came across these fantastic wells in India, in northern Rajasthan, called step wells. I wanted to try and find a view on these wells that has never been done before. There's this 50-foot pole that I could put my Hasselblad on the end of it and remotely run the XYZ three-way head on it and be able to compose above these step wells and then running with fiber optic down to my computer. So I had a 100-foot fiber optic cable, and I was able to then control the camera, the focus, the exposure, and start shooting with the camera at a 100-foot tether away from me. It's quite interesting when you kind of release yourself from gravity, so to speak, and find that you can make the point of view anywhere that you want it to be. And so I'm constantly renting helicopters. I just recently rented a hot air balloon. I have a 50-foot pole. I have cranes, and I know how to use buckets. Whatever it takes, I'm constantly trying to figure out where I want to stand, and then how do I get to stand there.